Okay, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about four plant families: the Ericaceae, the Plantaginaceae, the Rosaceae, and Ranunculaceae. So for this week and moving forward, I will be reviewing about four plant families a week to help you with your site recognition of these families. I wanted to point out that the Angiosperm phylogeny group's webpage, which is located at the Missouri Botanical Garden website. It has a great resources for you to learn about the relationship between these different groups of plants in their evolution. And so if you go to the Angiosperm phylogeny website, which let's just go to the home page here, it looks like this. You're going to go ahead and click on trees. And then you might not notice your group here because these are all kind of the larger orders. You can notice that because it ends in the ALES. But these little tree icons will take you. So like, let's say you wanted to learn about the Ranunculaceae family, that will be located here in the Ranunculaceae order. And one thing is like, you can kind of see there's some lineages that are not angiosperms, such as the ferns, the cycads. And then you can see the early angiosperm lineages, Amborellis, Nymphales, etc. And then these, you have the monocots, which we haven't really discussed yet, but we'll get there. And then you'll notice the Ranunculaceae is a pretty early deriving eudicot lineage, is one of the oldest here, besides the other early angiosperms and the monocots. So you can see the monocots branched off further back in time than these eudicots. And that one of the first things is the Ranunculaceae. Now, if I click on this tree, I can see that within the Ranunculaceae, there are a number of families, and you'll probably recognize a few of these. The Beriberidaceae, that is where the Oregon grape or Mahonia nervosa, the Papaveraceae, so the poppies, and the Dicentra formosa is in this group. And then the Ranunculaceae, we can click in there. And then that's going to take us to a page with great information about this family. It talks about, you know, where it occurs, how old the family is, where it's distributed in the world. And then these are all subfamilies here. So it's just showing that's only in this part of North America. Some are cosmopolitan all over the world. So it just goes through all these different subfamilies and which genera are in them. So anemones, you might notice those are the Ranunculus. And there's great information. So check that out. Chemistry, morphology, taxonomy, classification, all of that is in here. So that's one of the families we'll be covering today. The other families we'll be covering the Rosaceae. So I'm going to look in the Rosaceae here. You can see the Rosaceae is here on this branch. A number of other groups. We're also going to be covering the Plantaginaceae. Let's see if I can find that one. I feel like that's a pretty early one. Let's see. We might have to go backwards to find out where that one is. I'm not remembering exactly what order it is. Maybe it's in the Lamiales. Let's see. Oh, yep, there it is. So it's in the Lamiales order, and then you can see the Orbancaceae is a really cool group of hemiparasites that were thought to be closely related to some of the scrophs. You can see the Lamiaceae is in here, so a lot of bilaterally symmetrical. The Verbinaceae, this is where the mullen is. And then we have, of course, the Scrophulariaceae and the Plantaginaceae, which there's a number of scrophs that are now within the Plantaginaceae. So then you can go here and you can see about its distribution and whatnot. And then the last group, so we have Ranunculus, and then the Ericaceae. So let's see where that one is. I feel like that's here it is, Ericaceae. So we can go here and it gives us a little tree. Ericaceae is the most derived or most recently, one of the most recently derived lineages there. So yeah, it's just kind of a nice thing to kind of get oriented with where these different families fit within the broader context. So that's why I wanted to show you that. So now we're going to come back and I'm going to go ahead and screen share with the lecture. So let's begin with the Ericaceae. So Botany in a Day is a great book if you are interested in learning plant family characters. It's kind of black and white, kind of coloring book style, but it has these great images for some of them available online. And so I thought I would utilize this. There's about 3,000 species worldwide, 25 genera in the United States, and 22 genera in the Pacific Northwest. And they're defined by their 4 to 5 united sepals and 4 to 5 united petals, often in an urn or bell shape. If you were to do a cross-section of the petals and open them up, you would see 2 times as many stamens as the petals. And they typically have evergreen leaves, and they're typically evergreen shrubs with the urn-shaped flowers. This is a description from Simpson's book that we've been reading. And it's just a good habit to kind of read through these descriptions and get used to the terminology. Another feature that he's pointing out here is the porocidal stamens that are developed by anther inversion. So they have these really interesting stamens with pores in them. And then the floral formulas can vary a lot depending on which species in the Ericaceae you're referring to, but typically it's 5, and then these are bracketed, but it could be 2 to 7. Calyx 5, the Androecium is 5 plus 5, so double the amount. And then the Gynoecium is 5, superior usually or inferior. Here's some of the vegetative features. I'm not going to read through all of these, but you could work on learning some of them. They're usually alternate with simple leathery leaves. They're typically perennial woody shrubs. They occur mostly in temperate regions and acidic soils, and they have obligate mycorrhizae that we are referred to as iricoid mycorrhizae. And you can dig those up and actually look at those in the soils around Evergreen, actually. We've done a lab like that. And then here's some of the Northwest genera that are common. So for the flower, they're typically bisexual, actinomorphic. They're inflorescence that they can be solitary or in racemes, panicles, or corms. And we've already kind of been through the floral parts, but you could review that. And the capsules, the fruit can be capsules, drupes, or berries. And then let's see what else. So this is some Ericaceae floral morphology. So this is for vaccinium. You can see there's an inferior ovary, so the floral parts are attached above the ovary in this case. You can see these awesome anthers with the long appendages on them. You see the stigma in the center, and the urceolate corolla with the 5 lobe tips, and the sepals are green and attached here. And arbutus has a similar looking flower. I don't know if you've seen these flowering around here along the coastlines, but they're bisexual, and they have a superior ovary with 5 calyx, 5 fused petals, 10 stamens, and a gynoecium with 2 to 10 carpels or inferior. So this is a more general formula for Ericaceae, but this picture is of the arbutus here. I think I already did this part showing you the ovary position, so I'm not going to show that one again. Hopefully you've been experimenting with making cross sections of flowers. This is a cool one to kind of make a floral diagram of, this vaccinium flower. These have already bloomed, but if you go down into like a deep shady area, you might be able to find some. You might also be able to find some Arctostophilus flowers if you go out to the prairie. This is just showing you the floral formula. And again, this one is a superior. You can see the floral parts attached below the ovary. Here's a rhododendron flower, just to get another view. The anthers are dehiscing or opening through this terminal pore. There's lots of glandular hairs at the base next to the ovary. This is just a zoom in of that dehiscing pore. Here's some other members of this family. So the Vaccinium parvifolium, the red huckleberry, ovatum is the evergreen huckleberry. Of course, we have Gaultheria shalong, which we keyed out together. And then it's worth mentioning the Achlorophyllus Ericaceae subfamily Monotropoidea. Two local ones from our bioregion, the candy stick, Allotropa virgata, and Monotropa uniflora. These are considered mycoheterotrophs because they tap into the relationship between mycorrhizae and their host plants and take that the sugars that the tree is sharing with the mycorrhizae in exchange for other nutrients and water uptake help. Okay, so the Rosaceae, this one has about 3,000 species. A lot of them are economically and agriculturally important. There's about 50 genera in the United States, 33 in Washington. Some have prickles and thorns. So in terms of the vegetative characteristics, they're typically alternate. They can have simple or compound leaves, usually stipulate. And stipules are a really interesting feature of the stem that I'll show you in some pictures in a bit. Mostly they're perennial. There's a few annuals. They can be herbs, shrubs, or trees. They're a very cosmopolitan group, so they can grow in a lot of different regions of the Northern Hemisphere. And then in the Pacific Northwest, this is just to give you a sense of some of the different genera that we can find. A lot of these are blooming right now. Their flowers are bisexual, actinomorphic. They have 5 sepals and 5 petals typically, and they typically have a hypanthium, so look for that. They have numerous stamens that are whorled, usually in several series. They typically have a unicarpellate superior ovary that's sitting inside of the hypanthium. They can have many separate carpels with superior ovaries in a hypanthium, like any of the blackberries, or 2 to 5 united carpels in a superior or inferior ovary. The fruit can be an achene, an aggregate, a drupe, a pome, or a follicle. So really diverse in their fruit types. But the hypanthium is a key feature. It's cup-shaped fusion of the andrecium and the floral whorls with nectar-producing discs. So let's take a look at some of that. So here's the Nootka rose, Rosa nootkana. You'll notice that they have the compound leaves. We have 5 sepals, 5 petals. They produce these hips as their fruit type. This is like the carpel, and these are the withered calyx from last year, and they have thorns. You can look at some cross sections of these where you can see the hypanthium. So this is the fused ovary wall along these are all the carpels. But these are fused to the stamens and the calyx here. It's all like part of the floral parts here fused into this hypanthium. The other thing here is these stipules. So these stipules are these leaf-like appendages attached to the stem at the base of a leaf, okay? So leaf-like appendages attached to the stem at the base of the leaf. That's what a stipule is. So look for those. Often you have serrated leaves also in the Rosaceae family. Here's the bald hip rose. This is Rosa gymnocarpa. Unlike the Rosa nootka, the hip here doesn't have the withered remnants of the calyx. It's just a bald hip, gymnocarpa, naked seed. And they're more pear-shaped. Also, the Rosa gymnocarpa has more bristles than it does thorns. Here's the Rubus spectabilis. It's so fabulous. This is the salmonberry. Again, you'll notice these serrated leaves. These ones are trifoliate, so they're compound in this kind of a triangle shape with 3 parts. You have 5 petals and sepals, numerous stamens. The fruit matures into this aggregate berry. Frigeria, again, numerous stamens, 5 sepals, 5 petals, trifoliate serrated leaves. In this case of the strawberry, we have the cylindrical receptacle here in the center with many free carpels attached. And what ends up happening is that the receptacle becomes enlarged, and each one of these seeds is in a chene, the little stigma attached, but this is the fleshy receptacle that we eat. Amelanchier ulnifolia, this is Saskatoon. Also Rosaceae. You can see the 5 petals, the 5 sepals here. You can see 5 carpels, all sitting in this nectiferous disc. So this fused hypanthium or floral cup where there's nectar surrounded by numerous stamens, and then the sepals. Ranunculaceae, the buttercup family. So this is a great group. Again, this is more of an earlier derived angiosperm lineage. Herbs, lianas, or shrubs. They can have alternate, simple, or compound leaves. So here you can see an example of this kind of highly dissected leaf, often with lobes, or dissected with or without stipules. So they can have stipules. You can see kind of at the base, it's a little bit inflated, or here you can see these kind of leafy or appendagey type of structures at the base of the leaves. Flowers can be inflorescence or a single flower. They often have spirally arranged parts. So this is part of being in one of those basal groups of angiosperms. You often get this spiral arrangement. Think like magnolias, where you have like a whorl of petals, and then that kind of blends into a whorl of sepals, blur into petals, blur into stamens, blur into stigmas. The sepals are often petal-like and free. You can see some at the back here. Petals are free, few to many, often with nectaries. So they often have nectar here at the base. So if you were to pull off an individual petal, you might see a little structure where nectar can exude from. Stamens many, so often have numerous stamens. Gynoecium with few to many carpels that are separate. So each one of these little hooked structures is a carpel. And the fruit is a follicle and a chene. Here you can see that. It's an achene, part of a follicle or berry, often aggregated. This is saying a lot of the same stuff, but it talks about the spurs a little bit more. So the floral shapes can vary. Some are actinomorphic, but some can be zygomorphic, and some have spurs. So these kind of on the backs of the flowers, these long nectar tubes, because they're mostly insect or animal pollinated, that might need those kind of spurs to kind of get down into that reward. They mostly have bisexual flowers, but some can be dioecious, and then it gives you more than 3 for the calyx. Sometimes the petals are absent, or more than 5 with numerous stamens and more than 3 carpels that are superior. So this is giving you a view of the different fruit types. So follicles are dehiscent fruits that kind of open up and let the seeds come out. Seeded fleshy fruits are berries, and achenes are seeded indehiscent dry fruit. So these are achenes, and they're seeds inside, but they don't open up like the follicles do. These are some cool images I found that give you just more practice looking at different features of some of the Ranunculaceae that you might not have seen. Otherwise, drawings can sometimes be really helpful for looking at that. So you can take a look at that on your own. And then some native ones. So we have Aquilegia formosa. This is the columbine. I've seen this blooming right now. I recognize it by these dissected leaves. There are these spur-like flowers with this really beautiful shape, the kind of bending down, and then if you look at it face on, you can see just how gorgeous this flower is. Absolutely gorgeous. Ranunculus occidentalis, there's a lot of Ranunculus repens would be another one that you would see growing kind of in the roadsides around here. You can see the numerous stamens, the row of petals and fives, that kind of dissected looking leaf base, and then these achenes that are developing, that's the fruit type that are developing from these carpels. One really cool one that you might see if you're an alpine adventurer is these Dr. Seuss looking anemones, Anemone occidentalis. And I've mostly seen it in this form. And it's important to point out, this isn't the flower. They actually look like this, but the seeds end up looking like this. This is the seed heads. So when the plant's done flowering, that center part here elongates and matures into these achenes, these fruits with these long styles attached. And that's kind of what this is this spent fruit. So pretty beautiful Dr. Seuss looking kind of flower. Okay, and then the Plantaginaceae, or the plantain or snapdragon family. These are mostly herbaceous plants that are hairy and aromatic. The leaves are alternate or opposite. The flowers are bilateral, typically. And so that's zygomorphic, often two-lipped. And so that's an important feature here. The stamens are in 4, usually 2 + 2. And you can see here, I don't see the 4th, so I'd have to look at that, but you can see 1 there and 1 there, or 2 there and 1 there. The seeds attach to a central fruit, so they have axial placentation. And then the fruit is a dry capsule, and the seeds can be numerous. Plantago lanceolata is in this group. The narrow leaf plantain, I think you've keyed this one out. It has an inflorescence of a spike. This one's wind pollinated, so it doesn't really have showy flowers. The individual flowers you can see here have 4 petals, and they look like little bracts, like they're almost, you know, translucent and brown. So they're not meant to attract pollinators per se. And then you can see the 4 stamens there. This is the floral formula, the floral diagram, actually, where you can see the 4 petals and the stamens and the kind of axial placentation there. Another local member of the Plantaginaceae family that more like fits the description of this bilabiate zygomorphic corolla is the Collinsia grandiflora. You can see this growing at the prairies here. And so it's got the zygomorphic symmetry, 2-lipped petals. The Linaria, this is toadflax. We have Dalmatian toadflax over here. Again, with this zygomorphic structure, or the Linaria vulgaris. This is actually a noxious weed. This is butter and eggs, I think it's called. And has a very nasty smell to it, but a really beautiful flower. And then Digitalis purpurea is also now in the Plantaginaceae. This used to be, a lot of these used to be in the Scrophulariaceae, but now they've all been moved within here. Again, the zygomorphic symmetry. You have the fuzzy whorled leaves that will eventually extend up to the stem. All right, so hopefully that was helpful and informative in terms of getting a basic understanding of these plant families. We're going to have a little quiz now. I'd like you to try to match the characteristics to the correct family. So we have the Rosaceae, the Ranunculaceae, the Plantaginaceae, and the Ericaceae. And all of these little boxes represent different features of one of those four families. So I'd like you to try to do this without looking. And if you want to refer to my PowerPoint instead of this video, you can actually move these boxes around. You can create a new slide, move them around, and see if you can do it without looking. This is just a way to practice. Alrighty, folks. We will see you all very soon.